I was the useless one until my sister screamed in my face, "You lied to the whole family. I'm calling the cops." All my life, I was just the lunch lady, but that morning, I was feeding my dad porridge while my phone blew up. 36 calls from clients, schools, and my attorney. My sister called me a fraud, a traitor. Me? I was calmly making tea, waiting for my eggs to boil. 3 weeks ago, I was still Jenna Moore, cafeteria staff at Asheville Elementary, the woman who served lunch to over 400 kids a day. The one my family always called the underachiever. I was the middle child, not a doctor like my older brother, not a college lecturer like my two sisters. They drove Lexuses. I took the bus. They FaceTime from their mansions. I paid rent on a tiny apartment next to the train tracks. No one ever asked how I was doing. No one ever said, "Jenna, are you okay?" Until the day my father had a stroke, and I found out my whole family had made a group chat to plan everything without me. "You don't have enough medical knowledge to be involved," my sister said, not even looking me in the eye. "Just stick to serving mush at your cafeteria." They thought I was helpless, poor, useless. What they didn't know was, for the past 15 years, I've been running my own restaurant consulting firm, More Culinary Systems, helping struggling chains turn their businesses around. Last year, I made over $400,000 after taxes, but I never told anyone because I liked being underestimated until they found out, and everything exploded. If you've ever been looked down on by your own family, this is the story you need to hear. I was born into a family where success was the only measure of your worth. My brother, Brandon, is a top cardiologist in New York. My oldest sister, Meredith, runs a private hospital. And the middle one, Allison, is a sociology professor who writes critical essays on professional ethics and women's advancement. They're the pride of the Moore family. The local paper once called them the Great Trio in a Thanksgiving feature. And me? I'm Jenna, always in the family photos, but cut out of every important conversation. I still remember Christmas when I was 20. I was washing dishes when Meredith walked into the kitchen, gave me a pitying look, and said, "You should start thinking bigger. You can't spend your whole life in the kitchen like Mom did." Before I could respond, Brandon straightened his Harvard tie and added, "Well, first, you need a college degree at least." They laughed. I laughed too, just to get through it. I never went to college. I chose to work early to help my mom. My first job was washing trays at the elementary school cafeteria. Later, I moved up to the kitchen, then to running the entire lunch program. I created menus, managed budgets, ordered supplies, and handled logistics for nearly 500 meals a day. I loved that job, not for the title, but because it meant kids didn't go hungry. But to my family, it was just slopping food onto trays. Allison once said at dinner, "Jenna must be happy she doesn't have to think too much." My dad went quiet. He didn't say anything, just let out a sigh. I got used to being left out. My birthday was often combined with someone else's graduation party, major decisions, new homes, job changes, vacations. I found out last, or never. My family built a system, one where I was always on the outside. At first it hurt, then I got angry, but eventually I learned to stay quiet. And I used that silence to build. Every night after my cafeteria shift, I opened my laptop, pulled up spreadsheets, and replied to emails from restaurants on the verge of going under. I helped them slash costs, streamline operations, renegotiate supplier contracts. I didn't have an MBA, but I had 10 years of hands-on experience. I saved dozens of businesses, but I never once managed to save my place in my own family. Until the day my father had a stroke, and I realized, even then, They still didn't believe in me, not even when the one person I loved most needed me the most. I found out my dad had a stroke from a distant, awkward phone call from my mom. Your siblings have been really busy this week, trying to figure things out for your father," she said. I was standing in the school kitchen, still holding a container of peeled carrots. My heart dropped. "What do you mean, Mom? What happened to Dad?" "You didn't know." She hesitated. "Your father had a stroke on Tuesday. They're discussing which rehab facility to send him to." I went numb. "They?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Brandon, Meredith, and Allison. They made a separate group chat. They figured you were probably busy and you're not really familiar with medical stuff anyway." I didn't say anything. I just hung up, then immediately called Brandon. Why wasn't I told about Dad? His voice was calm, distant, almost cold. "Jenna, don't take it the wrong way. We're dealing with some serious medical decisions here. Each day at the rehab facility costs over $8,000. You work in a cafeteria. This isn't really your area to weigh in on." I let out a bitter laugh. "So because I work in a cafeteria, I don't deserve to know whether my dad is alive or not?" He sighed. "If you can get time off from your little gig, maybe visit once a month. But giving input? Jenna, come on." And then, the final blow. It wasn't what he said, it was how he laughed. A loud, dismissive laugh, like I had just cracked the world's worst joke. Then Meredith chimed in. "Brandon's right. This is grown-up stuff, not some middle school lunch menu." I said nothing. Hung up. My eyes didn't sting anymore. Everything was perfectly clear. That night, after cleaning up from the after-school class dinner, I sat down at my laptop, opened Zillow. I searched for homes with wide hallways, ground-floor bedrooms, and wheelchair-accessible bathrooms. A lakefront property popped up. Listing price $198 million. I hit contact agent right then and there. The next day, I drove to see the house, and 4 days later, I paid the deposit, $2 million in cash. No mortgage. While my siblings were still arguing over how to split the rehab bill, I was already scheduling renovations, installing stair lifts, medical beds, and hiring the best private nursing team in the entire state. I didn't need to argue. I made the decision. 3 weeks after I bought the lake house, my dad was finally cleared for discharge. The family still hadn't agreed on which rehab center to send him to. The one in Raleigh was too far, and the private clinic near Allison's place was, in Brandon's words, too expensive for mediocre quality. I didn't say a word, didn't send any links, didn't join the family Zoom calls. I had other things to do. I was overseeing the installation of a lift system, setting up a fully adjustable hospital-grade bed, testing the new blood pressure and glucose monitors, and coordinating schedules for 2 nurses and a physical therapist. I didn't hire cheap. I hired the best, and I vetted every single one of them more thoroughly than any hospital board ever could. I scheduled the transfer, Friday, 8 o'clock a.m. sharp. That morning, I walked into the hospital alone, carrying a folder with signed medical consent forms, paid invoices, and the specialized transport paperwork. At the reception desk, Robert, Meredith's husband, was locked in a heated argument with the caseworker. He was waving papers around, ranting about budgets, facility costs, and insurance reimbursements. I stepped forward, placed my folder on the desk, and said clearly, "Mr. Mitchell's care has been arranged. He's coming home with me today." The room went silent. Robert turned, stunned. "What are you talking about, Jenna? You mean your tiny apartment?" I pulled out the licensed transport contract, home care permits, and digital health records. I bought a new house, I said calmly. It has a private room for Dad and a lake view. His eyes widened. With what? Your cafeteria salary? I didn't answer. At exactly 8:30 a.m., the medical transport van pulled away from the hospital, carrying my father toward a home he didn't even know existed. A home that would soon become the place where he would begin his second chance at life. I helped him from the wheelchair onto the new bed, tucked him in under a soft blue blanket, his favorite color, and adjusted the bedside lamp. He held my hand, didn't say a word, just nodded, and a tear rolled down his cheek. No words were needed for a man who had always let others decide for him. This time, it was his youngest daughter who took charge. No drama, no shouting, just one simple thing: doing what was right. I took care of my dad like a shadow for the first 3 weeks. The nurses rotated their shifts. The physical therapy ran on schedule. Everything functioned like a professional rehab center, except it was warmer, quieter, and no one in the family had a clue. My siblings were still texting each other every night, sending links to nursing homes like they were comparing car models. No one mentioned me. No one asked, "Hey, is Jenna handling anything?" They still thought I was out back tossing salad in the school cafeteria, until that changed. It was a Saturday morning. I was making coffee for Dad when my phone lit up. A call from Paul, Meredith's ex-husband. I hesitated for a second, then declined. A few minutes later, a message popped up. "I just saw your name on the Atlanta conference board. Keynote speaker, more culinary systems." Attached was a screenshot. Jenna Moore, turning failing restaurants into million-dollar systems. I stood still for a moment, then quietly turned off the screen and poured my dad's coffee like nothing happened. But 10 minutes later, the storm hit. 36 texts, 11 missed calls, 5 emails, 3 voicemails, and a flood of Facebook tags. "Carol, explain this. Is this some kind of joke?" Brandon, "How long have you been hiding this?" Allison, "If you had money all this time, why let us panic over Dad's bills?" I didn't respond. I kept making Dad's breakfast, toast and soft eggs, just the way he liked. My phone buzzed on the table, the vibrations nudging the salt shaker like some twisted little game. Dad turned to me. His left hand, the one that still worked, pointed at the phone. His brows furrowed. "Our family is feeling a lot right now," I said, placing his plate in front of him. "But that can wait. Breakfast comes first." The phone rang again. This time, it was Brandon. I tapped speaker. His voice came through, dripping with hostility. "Fraud. Imposter. You lied to all of us. I have friends in law. This won't end quietly." I kept my tone steady. "I didn't lie. I just never corrected what you all chose to believe. You let us think you were broke. You watched us scramble over Dad's care while you sat on hundreds of thousands of dollars." I took a quiet breath. "You know, Brandon, everyone assumed I couldn't do anything more than scoop food onto trays. I just never felt the need to explain otherwise." Dad didn't eat. He sat there watching, his eyes sharper than I'd seen in weeks. Then came a knock at the door. I opened it. It was Mrs. Lawson, our neighbor. She held a steaming tray of lasagna and looked worried. "I heard shouting. Is everything okay?" "My family's getting to know a new version of me." I smiled, taking the dish. She placed her hand gently on mine. "Jenna, your father's lucky. Not everyone has a daughter like you." I smiled back, but deep down I knew the real storm had only just begun. I knew they wouldn't let it go. Just 3 hours after Brandon's call, I heard tires screech outside, then pounding on the front door. Loud, angry. I stepped onto the porch. There stood Meredith, hands on hips, eyes bloodshot. Brandon was getting out of the car, fixing his tie. And Allison? She stood off to the side, phone up, recording. "This is documentation for legal purposes," she said, like she was filming some courtroom documentary. "I didn't invite them in, but they barged in anyway," as if they owned the place. Meredith walked straight into the living room and stopped cold. She saw the medical bed in the corner, the ceiling lift, the stainless steel shelving neatly lined with labeled medications. Each bottle had Dad's name, the dosage, the schedule, perfectly organized. The monitors for blood pressure, glucose, and the rehab equipment gleamed under soft light, like a private clinic. Brandon moved toward the bathroom, opened the door, and froze. Zero threshold shower, grab bars, lift assist toilet seat, non-slip floors, perfectly installed. Allison kept filming, slowly panning across the space, muttering, "What is this? What the hell is this?" Then Meredith spotted the corner desk. Simple, clean, where I'd just finished a Zoom meeting the day before. She picked up one of the crisp white business cards sitting neatly on top and read aloud. "Jenna Moore, CEO, Moore Culinary Systems." Her hand trembled. Her face went pale. Brandon turned. His tone changed instantly. "What is this scam? Are you conning small restaurants for money? Faking some sob story for attention?" I said nothing. The doorbell rang. I walked over and opened it. It was Catherine, my dad's physical therapist, right on schedule. "Good morning, Mr. Moore," she smiled, wheeling in the equipment. The three of them stepped aside. "Ready for your leg work today?" Catherine's voice was clear, professional, almost pointed. As she began to help Dad sit up, I quietly opened my laptop. They hovered behind me, curious. I logged into my business banking portal. The screen loaded, with the National Bank's logo and a six-figure balance starting with a 7. Brandon choked. "Oh my God, is this real?" I nodded calmly. Meredith turned away, clenching her fists. Allison kept filming, but her hand was starting to shake. I opened a second tab. My latest tax return. Brandon let out a breath, softly. "She paid more in taxes than I make as a doctor." I turned and looked each of them in the eye, then said, evenly without raising my voice, "I never said I was poor. I never asked anyone for a dime. Every assumption you made about me was yours, not mine." Silence. Heavy. Allison lowered her phone, dialed our mom. "Mom, you need to know something. Jenna's not who we thought. She's rich." I smiled, not out of revenge, not because I needed their validation, but because, finally, they saw it with their own eyes. Undeniable, unspoken, uncovered. And this was only the beginning. I thought once they saw the truth with their own eyes, they'd back off quietly. I was wrong. 1 week after the three of them stormed into my house, the next storm hit. But this time, it wasn't just within the family. It spread through town. First came a 1-star review on the Google business page for Moore Culinary Systems. No name, no profile picture, just one short, icy sentence. "If she can lie to her own family, imagine how she treats her clients. Untrustworthy." I knew instantly. It was Meredith. That cold, clinical tone. It read like every email she's sent over the last 10 years. Less than 48 hours later, I got a call from the principal at Asheville Elementary. "Jenna," she said gently but clearly uneasy, "we received an anonymous report about suspicious financial activity involving one of our staff, along with a screenshot from the Atlanta conference website. That was you, right?" I nodded. "Yes, but there's nothing shady. I've done nothing wrong." I believe you personally, she said, but the school board is requesting a review just to ensure transparency. I'll need you to meet with HR this Friday. I ended the call and turned toward my dad. He was mid-therapy with Catherine, but his eyes were locked on me. I smiled at him. It's okay, Dad. I've got this. That evening, a neighbor stopped by. Said they saw someone sitting in a car taking pictures of my house. The next morning, my company's yard sign was gone. The stack of flyers I kept in my trunk, also gone. I installed 4 more security cameras around the house, told no one, just notified the security firm to switch to overnight patrol. Meanwhile, I got 3 calls from clients. Each started the same. Jenna, I just got a weird phone call from someone claiming to be a family member of yours. They were asking about our contract from last year. Said something didn't add up. I apologized, then gave them the short version. My family's going through a rough internal situation. Thankfully, people who had actually worked with me knew better. One client, Mr. John from Tavern 42, didn't mince words. If it weren't for you in 2018, we'd be bankrupt. They can make calls all they want, but they can't rewrite the truth. I hung up, and for the first time in years, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion, pure, bone-deep exhaustion, tired of fighting every single day, just to defend what should have never been questioned in the first place. Honor, credibility, truth. I never imagined the ones putting me on the defensive would be the very people who once called me their little sister. When your own family accuses you, when the whole town starts whispering, you hope that someone, just one person, will stand by you. I had an entire team, and they showed up without warning. It was Monday morning. I was rinsing vegetables for lunch at school when Maria, my coworker of 10 years, walked up beside me and gently tapped my shoulder. I heard, she said. Not a question, just a statement. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Maria pulled out a folded piece of paper. I opened it. It was a letter, addressed to me, signed by more than 20 cafeteria staff, supervisors, and teachers. They wrote, "In 15 years at Asheville Elementary, Jenna Moore has never missed a single day. She treats the students like her own. We know her character better than any rumor out there." I couldn't hold it in. Tears spilled into my nylon gloves. Maria squeezed my shoulder. Anyone who believes that trash doesn't deserve to call themselves a neighbor. That afternoon, while I was helping Dad with his standing exercises, my phone rang. It was the owner of Greenfire Grill, one of my biggest clients. "Jenna," he said, "I saw that negative review on Google. I'm reposting the testimonial I gave you last month. Anyone who saved 4 of my restaurants during the pandemic is no villain." Then he offered something else, something bigger. "I'm writing a formal letter to the Asheville School Board. They need to know who you really are, and I'm going to say your name clearly. Spell out exactly what you've done for my businesses." I thanked him. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from gratitude. That evening, I heard a soft knock at the door. It was Mrs. Lawson, the sweet older neighbor from across the street. She was holding an envelope, her expression calm but firm. "This is security footage from my cameras. Someone was standing outside your gate last night. Same one from last week. I already filed a police report, and I told them this. If they ever need someone to testify to Jenna Moore's character, I'll be there in court." I stood there speechless. No one in my family had ever done that for me. But these people I didn't share blood with, they chose to stand by me. Not because of some story they were told, not because they picked a side. They chose based on what they saw. They believed in actions, not gossip. and they didn't need me to prove anything. They already knew me. That night, I wrote an email to the Atlanta conference organizers. I asked them to move my keynote to a virtual format. I wanted to stay with my dad. I didn't need to be on a stage to be heard anymore. The people who needed to hear me already had, and this time, they spoke up for me. I thought, once the community spoke up, they'd back down. But they didn't. They didn't back off. They lawyered up. Wednesday morning, I received a letter from a local law firm. Sender, Brandon Moore. The content, a formal notice of legal action demanding financial transparency for parental care assets and questioning the legality of bringing my father home without a family vote. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it burned. I'm the only one of 4 siblings who bathes him, feeds him, helps with physical therapy, manages his medications, and now I'm being asked to justify guardianship finances. That afternoon, Catherine, Dad's physical therapist, stopped by as usual. When I told her, she paused, then said quietly, "We need a legal file. I'll write a full report on Mr. Moore's recovery progress. What you're doing here, no one can discredit that." That night, I logged onto my computer and filed a petition for legal caregiver status. I already had Dad's signed consent. Now it was time to make it official. Luckily, I had the receipts, security footage, treatment plans, medical equipment invoices, meal and mobility logs, everything tracked from day one. 2 days later, I got a notice from the court. Application approved. I was now my father's legal caregiver. Word reached Brandon and Meredith faster than I expected. Monday morning, I pulled into my driveway after my school shift and saw their car parked out front. Meredith was at the door, fists clenched. This time, no cameras. "Jenna, we need to talk." "You can't just claim Dad like he's property." Brandon stood behind her, holding a thick folder. "Do you have an attorney yet? Because we've got a hearing coming." I stepped calmly onto the porch. "I'm registered. I have court approval, and if you keep showing up like this, I will file for a restraining order." Meredith's face flushed. "I'm your sister." "Yes," I replied. "But you've never acted like one." Brandon stepped forward, voice sharp. "We know you've got money. Don't think you can hide it forever. It's only fair we split the cost of Dad's care. 25% of your assets belong to us." I looked at them. 2 people who shared my blood, but felt more foreign than strangers. "I don't need your help, and I owe you nothing." They left, but I knew it wasn't over. Days later, I got a call from the bank. Someone had tried to access my father's account without authorization. They used fake documents, tried to impersonate me. The name they gave? Meredith Moore. I locked the account immediately, filed a report with the Elder Abuse Protection Agency, added extra security to all of Dad's medical files. But what made me truly shake was what I found the next morning. A piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. The message was cut from old newspaper clippings. "Some people need to remember their place." I didn't feel angry anymore. For the first time, I felt real danger creeping in. I didn't want to play defense anymore. I'd stayed silent for too long. I'd shown them the house, shown them the equipment, even showed them the bank account. And still, they doubted. They tried to tear me down. Fine. This time, I was going to show the entire town. Saturday morning, as sunlight poured into the living room, I helped Dad into his wheelchair, wrapped a scarf gently around his neck, and wheeled him to the door. "We've got an important appointment today, Dad," I whispered. On the calendar, the Southeast Food and Business Conference, hosted right here at the Asheville Convention Center. Just 15 minutes from home. Originally, I'd asked to speak remotely, to stay close to Dad, but after everything they put me through, I changed my mind. I emailed the organizers. I'll be speaking live, and I'm bringing the most important person in my life with me. As we entered the grand lobby, me in a cream-colored suit, Dad sitting tall in his wheelchair. Every head turned. Some had read about me in the news. Others were wondering why the lunch lady was on the keynote roster alongside CEOs. I stepped onto the stage, adjusted the mic. Down below, I saw phones held up, people live streaming. One of them was Allison. She was in the back row recording like she was waiting for me to slip up just to post it online. I began, "My name is Jenna Moore. I'm the CEO of Moore Culinary Systems. I'm also the cafeteria manager at Asheville Elementary, where I've worked for 15 years. And this is my father, the man I care for every single day, without needing anyone's permission." The room fell silent. I continued, "I've been called a fraud, accused of hiding money. They forget. I never asked anyone for a single cent. I simply let them believe what they wanted to believe. While they argued over rehab bills, I installed medical lifts, hired nurses, and helped my father relearn how to walk with my own 2 hands." I clicked the remote. Behind me, the screen lit up with Dad's full recovery timeline. Photos from home surveillance, physical therapy progress, no narration, no spin, just the truth, raw and undeniable. Down below, I saw Allison lower her phone. Her eyes were red for the first time. She had no words left to fight with. I closed with this: "I don't need a title to have worth. I don't need a degree to deserve respect. All I ask is this: don't judge someone when you've only seen a sliver of their life." The room rose to their feet. Thunderous applause. My father, though it took effort, lifted his hand and gave one slow, steady clap. I stepped down from the stage, pushing him through the crowd. Not because they pitied me, but because they saw something my family never would. I was never small. They were just too blind to see it. That night, just as I helped Dad into bed, my phone rang. It was Mom. "They want to come see you," she said softly. I paused for a moment, then replied, "My door's never been locked." An hour later, Brandon, Meredith, and Allison arrived. No storming in this time, no accusations, no cameras, just 3 people walking slowly, heads down, like each step was a quiet swallow of pride. I invited them into the living room. Dad sat in his wheelchair, alert, watching each of them closely. Meredith spoke first. "Are you really doing all this, Jenna?" I didn't answer. I simply pointed to the whiteboard on the wall, the one tracking Dad's therapy. 47 days, not a single one missed. Brandon pulled a stack of papers from his jacket pocket. "This is the paperwork to drop the lawsuit," he said, placing it on the table. I was wrong. Coming from Brandon, that meant more than any courtroom ruling I could have dreamed of. Allison stepped closer. She took my hand. For the first time in probably a decade. "We've spent so long chasing what we thought success looked like. We went blind to what really matters. I'm sorry we never saw you." I didn't cry. I just gave her hand a small squeeze. Not to forgive, but to let her know. I heard her. Then Dad, silent the whole time, leaned slightly toward the table. I knew what he wanted. I handed him a marker and the whiteboard. His hand shook, but his writing was steady, deliberate. "Jenna, ill best daughter." Meredith broke down. Brandon turned his face away, but his eyes were red too. We sat together for nearly 2 hours, not to erase everything. That's impossible. But to begin from the truth. Brandon admitted to a mountain of student debt he'd been hiding for years. Meredith confessed that Paul had moved out. after all her online attacks toward me. Allison quietly said she envied the peace in my eyes, something she'd never known herself. I wasn't the only one who had been hurt. I was just the only one who never said it out loud. We didn't become some picture-perfect family that night, but for the first time in decades, we told the truth. No pretending, no competing, no sarcasm, just children sitting around their father, finally seeing everything they had missed and trying to find their way back. 6 months after that night of truth-telling, my life didn't turn into some fairy tale. I still showed up every morning at Asheville Elementary's cafeteria, chopping fruit, wiping trays, pouring chocolate milk for the kids. In the afternoons, I held meetings with restaurant owners, reviewed business strategies, analyzed financial reports, and helped secure funding for a new Florida expansion. I lived 2 lives, and I no longer had to hide either one. My dad, now able to walk with a frame, made his way from the bedroom to the backyard on his own. He liked sitting under the porch, watching the lake ripple under the soft gold of sunset. He spoke more now, laughed more, and every time he held my hand, he'd say the same thing. "You did it, Jenna." My mom, after years of standing in the middle, finally chose to stand for the truth. She moved in with us. Every morning she brewed coffee, double-checked therapy schedules, and organized client files like a proper assistant. Brandon no longer sends emails threatening legal action. Now he sends pictures of his kids and sometimes asks for financial advice. I don't say no. Meredith, she's learning how to start over. Her messages are no longer filled with judgment, but curiosity. Check-ins. She's started therapy. She deleted every post she ever made about me. Allison still keeps some distance, but once in a while, I get a bouquet with a simple card. "You inspired me today." I don't need them to change completely. I just need them to see the truth and respect my existence, not for a title, but for the person I really am. What I've learned through all of this is not how to protect my reputation, but this. You don't need to prove yourself to people who refuse to see you. You just have to live fully, live kindly, and let time do the rest. Not everyone will believe you. Not everyone will love you the right way. But if you keep doing the right thing, quietly, consistently, with heart, then one day, the truth will speak for itself. And when that day comes, you won't need to shout. You'll just smile. Because deep down, you'll know you stayed silent not out of weakness, but because you were busy building a life worth being proud of.